The Solar News team was in Giwan, Eastern Samar when Typhoon Yolanda made its first landfall. Here with us is our reporter David Santos to share with us the team's experience during the onslaught of Typhoon Yolanda in the area. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Amelie.
We're so happy to see you because for quite some time we didn't know where you were. What was it like when Typhoon Yolanda made landfall in Giwan?
Yeah, we reached Giwan shortly before midnight of Thursday because we got information that instead of Borongan, the information that was coming from Pagasa is that the landfall will be in Giwan. So we had to travel from Borongan. That itself, to travel alone, was kind of difficult because from then we could already get a sense, get a feeling of how tough the typhoon would be. So just by midnight, we got to Giwan. Well, the weather was kind of manageable for us, meaning we were still able to travel, we were able to look for a place to stay. But around 3 o'clock in the morning, that's a Friday, things were really difficult.
The video that we're seeing now, is this what it was on Friday morning?
That was just, I think that was taken around 7:30 in the morning.
So after the landfall?
After the landfall, after the maybe I could say the peak of the typhoon had hit Giwan. What we're seeing here are people trying to check on relatives, on friends, on neighbors, and we saw several people coming out of their homes. Some were wounded. I can see from that. People were holding into their heads, some were bleeding, some had wounds in their feet, on their hands, and on different parts of the body. These are residents who have opted to stay inside their homes. Now, there's a lot more. There were really problems for some of those who chose to evacuate it early on. We understand that some residents, quite a number, hundreds of residents in Giwan were evacuated, were moved to schools, to a gymnasium in that town for their safety. But apparently, sadly, Ameline, at the height of the typhoon, these establishments, these buildings also caved in. These also collapsed. So you can just imagine at the height of the typhoon, people were scampering to different places, trying to look for anything, anywhere that they could seek shelter on.
You were, I heard, I think this is just the one inside the emergency room in where you were at that time, and you had to like hold the door just so the wind would not open it.
Right.
Was that strong?
It was really, I could say, we should also be grateful to the residents of Giwan because at the time when we left the pension house at 3 o'clock, we were planning to go to the municipal hall because we thought that would be a safer place to go. The government will be there, rescue teams will be there, it would be a concrete structure. But people advised us against traveling at that time. So we got into this hospital. This is the Immaculate Conception Parish. Now what we are seeing now is establishment, just a few blocks from the hospital where we're staying. Just after the typhoon, people were really hungry. People were desperate. People were frustrated. People were didn't know what to do. So anything that they could find on the road, these are goods that were, just laid out there. I mean, just after the typhoon hit. So people just took anything that they can, most especially food, because they had anticipated that hours after the typhoon, they had nowhere to get food. So some of them began, taking all this stuff. And this was like, this video we're showing now is, I think, was taken just around 7:30 in the morning when the typhoon was kind of slowing down. This is the school I'm referring to. This was supposed to be an evacuation center. But you can see from the footage,
it was wiped out.
There's nowhere you can see people could, seek shelter on. I mean, we were in Pablo last year, Typhoon Pablo in Catil.
How do you compare it with Typhoon Pablo's
it's Catil all over again, but much more. As Secretary Almendras was saying, it's much more the intensity and the breadth of the damage and the devastation was so much wider. And I could just imagine how helpless we were. I mean, to see all these people find somewhere they can hide, they can seek shelter on.
And you said that even hours after all this happened, there was no help or relief coming to them.
Right.
So the hopelessness of the people, how they were feeling at that time.
Must have been magnified.
Right. When all these events were unfolding before us, and we can see all the desolation, the frustration, the pain. I mean, the people suffering, the hunger. We people in G1 then thought that the incident, that the impact of typhoon was just within G1, because there was no contact, there was no power, there's no information what's going on outside, there's no way we can send information outside from what had happened to G1. So people then were thinking, they were the
Nobody
ones
was
only
there to help
suffering.
them.
Yeah. So then the next day, on Saturday, we were still all hoping that choppers would be flying in. I mean, anything, trucks.
Some aid.
Yes, aid would
Some
be
help.
coming in. Government from outside G1 would be exerting effort to come in. But I will tell you, Ameline, when we decided to travel from G1 to Tacloban, because we thought that things were really getting hopeless, we passed through around 10 towns, and on at least 10 towns from G1 to Tacloban, the situation was all the same. Each and every town had ravaged homes. The roads had all toppled, electric and power, communication posts, uprooted trees, debris all over. It was really hard to navigate through the roads. I mean, what was normally a 3 to 4 hour drive from G1 to Tacloban,
It took
us
how long?
out 16 hours.
16 hours.
And
You rode a motorbike,
We
right?
took 3 motorcycles. I mean, it's a good thing that some residents of G1 volunteered to drive for us. We had to carry the motorcycles from each and every 3 electric posts that we have to pass through just to be able to cross over and get to Tacloban. And back then, we thought we could get help from Tacloban because we needed to send the word
information,
out
yeah.
that what is happening on G1. But apparently, when we reached Tacloban, we were shocked. We were in disbelief. We did not expect that Tacloban was also would incur so much damage as well. So we just hope. I think the government is really. There's so much things to be done in Tacloban that even before they could reach to G1, they had to pass through many towns. So I don't know how help can get reached to G1.
Has help reached G1 by now? Can they be contacted there?
I was able to speak to DND spokesman, Dr. Peter Galvez, yesterday. They were exploring the possibility of, well, firstly, there are only 2 options available as we speak, because some of the roads leading to Tacloban were badly damaged. So there's no way land travel will be possible unless you take the motorcycle. But we cannot.
That will take so long.
So they're taking the possibility of using the Navy, the Coast Guard, and through aerial transfer of goods. Now, they're also thinking, Dr. Galvez, quoting Dr. Galvez, he was saying that they might consider asking the help of U.S. and other countries to assist in transporting all these goods because the devastation was so massive outside Tacloban. We have to realize that Tacloban, while we understand that Tacloban is among the hardest hit, we saw the situation in Tacloban yesterday. It was hell. I mean, we see dead people lying around, and the devastation was also massive. But we must also remember that there are so many other people relying for help. There is no sense of order as of this time. There's no government. There's no, the local officials, we were asking, what are they doing? Who's in charge? The local officials were saying, we too are victims ourselves. There's so much that we can do. So there is really the need for some people to go to these towns and take over and intervene. Right.
Now, did the DND say when they will be able to do that?
Well, they're working on it. I understand the president was in Tacloban yesterday. He had a series of meeting with local officials there, and I think they're working on that idea.
So, David, we can only just imagine what you had to go through at that time, considering this is not the first time that you've been reporting in a disaster area. How do you feel? When I first saw you, I was really relieved because we really did not hear anything from you. We even tried to contact the 8th ID, but nobody could contact anybody from that area. And for a while, we didn't hear anything. How did it feel, especially Samar, considering that particular area, they're used to typhoons.
Yeah.
They're used to this kind of weather.
Right.
But what did they say about this one?
Well, we were there days before, no? I mean, a couple of days before the typhoon hit Samar, and we were speaking to some people there. And then, yeah, that's the same thing that they've been saying. We're so used to this typhoon. We've been in the typhoon area of the country for so long. The last time we experienced a really tough one was in the 80s. They were mentioning Typhoon Ruping.
Yeah.
But since then, they have the sense of preparedness, but not as prepared as what had happened now. I mean, they are all in unison saying this is the worst ever. This is the biggest, the strongest, and they never expected this to happen. But we are sorry that we made some people worried. But our concern there when we decided to leave Tacloban, I mean rather Giwan, because everybody was telling us, some people were telling us, discouraging us to travel because there's no way that we could pass through the road. We were thinking that we just have to wait until the roads were cleared, but no, we decided to move out and just tell everyone we're okay, and we just need to bring word out on the situation in Giwan.
Did you also see a lot of dead bodies sprawling in the streets? And how is Giwan compared to Tacloban City?
Right. The good thing about Giwan is that the dead were somehow, well, we could see people helping each other. People were helping if there are dead people recovered from a wreckage site, a house that had collapsed or a structure that had collapsed. People would help each other, and then there's no embalming, there are no funeral parlor services there. People, I mean, the dead are just immediately brought to the cemetery and just buried immediately.
Like what we
are
saw
seeing
in
now?
the report, it's mass burials.
Yeah, right.
So is that what's happening
Is
there
that
as
the
well?
one?
This is a story of a family living in a coastal village at the height of the typhoon. They did not leave the area. You must remember that when the typhoon hit Giwan, it was really dark. There was no power. It was around 4 o'clock in the morning. So, debris
Flying.
Yes.
were flying. I mean, was flying. So some of them were actually knocked down by
Yes.
these debris and then fell into the sea, then drowned. Some of the video we saw earlier
Yes.
was a family that was recovered from the sea hours after the typhoon had hit, and then they just brought to the cemetery and just buried immediately. And I may just add, another concern for Giwan is that Giwan is surrounded. Well, it has at least 4 islands in that town, all facing the Pacific Ocean. By the time we left by Saturday, there's still no word yet on what had happened to people living there.
Living
One
there,
island
right,
there
right.
is Homonhon. Homonhon Island. It has 8 barangays. So we quite a number of people living there. Giwan is the second most populated town in eastern Samar after Borongan City. So it is a very populated town. And Homonhon is one of the more populated areas in eastern Samar. So there's no word yet on what had happened
So what
to
you're
these
saying,
islands.
these coastal barangays that were by the Pacific Ocean, there's no word. We don't know where these families are.
No.
And like what we saw in the video earlier, that's an example of just one family that was
Right.
taken out of the water because they were. Did they know that they were supposed to evacuate?
I was able to speak to the name I cannot recall just this very moment, but I was able to speak to the municipal disaster official of Giwan on Thursday night before we moved to Giwan. He was in Homonhon Island because he was working on people needing to move to the mainland because the officials understood that these people can be unsafe. But what happened was there are a lot of women and children that were moved to the mainland. A lot of their men stayed on in these islands to secure their houses. I mean, as commonly practiced by many of our kababayans, no? They leave the men to stay in their homes, to secure their homes at the time of disaster. They let the women and children and the old people go to the evacuation centers. So as of this time, there's no communication. They are asking the Coast Guard and the Philippine Navy if they can go to Giwan and go to these islands. I have to mention some of these islands: Manicani Island, Cubabao Island, Victory Island, Suluan Island, and Homonhon Island. These islands need to be checked. Need to people. Authorities have to see what had happened to this, because we have no idea. There are reports of dead, but these are unverified. We are just all speculating. But there's so much. There's great concern for people living in these islands.
Okay. Lastly, David, again, can you mention those islands for authorities to check on? That's very important.
Right. Well, Homonhon is the biggest island. It has 8 barangays. Then there are 4 other islands. These are Manicani, Cubabao, Victory, and Suluan. These are all within the jurisdiction of Giwan Town.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, David
thank you,
Santos,
David,
for giving us all this information. And I'm sure it must have been something else for you to be there and experience and see all that.
Can I just add one more?
Sure,
Sorry.
go ahead.
What is
This is something, I'm holding here quite some notes.
Messages.
These are coming from residents of Giwan.
Yeah.
They've been, they
unable to
asking to call their relatives everywhere, nationwide, just to assure to them that they're all right.
All right.
They just some
Go
points
ahead,
I would like
take
to
your time.
mention. Basically, what they're asking are food, water, medicine for, wounded people, anti-tetanus medicines, and also formalin. And they're mentioning about ATS, these are for the dead.
Okay.
So these are the 4 basic things that they need now. Of course, it would help if they can bring in tents and temporary shelters, but basically they need food, water, formalin for the dead, and medicines for the wounded.
Anti-tetanus, and probably anti-leptospirosis as well. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
That's it. That's it.
Okay.
We will be calling
this
these numbers as part of our public service to ensure the people, the family outside Giwan, to assure that those who have left messages for us, we'll assure them that they're okay.
Okay. Thank you so much,
Thank
David
you, David.
Santos.